Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is running away with the MVP race. Shai is averaging 31 a night as arguably the best scorer in the league while playing very solid defense for a historically great Thunder team that sits at 27-5, a 69-win pace after its first 32 games. Shai is looking like a top 3 player on the planet right now, having scored 30 or more in 13 of his last 16 games, and with Jokic and Giannis' teams trailing far behind the Thunder and Luka failing to reach the 65 games requirement, number 2 in OKC needs to be the heavy MVP favorite. But just how good has Shai been this season? Well, since November 11th, this is how many points he scored each game: 45, 29, 28, 36, 32, 28, 37, 35, 36, 32, 26, 30, 31, 39, 32, 35, 25, 41, 45, 22, 35, and 40. He may not be Harden averaging 40, but he is averaging 33.6 in that 22-game stretch. And maybe even more impressively, he's doing that on otherworldly shooting splits at 54.4% from the field, 38.2% from deep, and 87.4% from the line. He's just the 5th player this decade to average 33.5 on 65.6% or better true shooting across 22 games. The others being Steph, Harden, Dame, and Embiid, some of the greatest scorers this game has ever seen, which is what Shai is becoming as arguably the best scorer in the league right now. He's tied for the most 30-pointers this year with 18, and led the league the 2 prior years, and is also tied for the most 40-pointers with 4. His consistency is unmatched. The lowest he has scored this year is 18, and he is leading the league in scoring with 1,000 points, on pace for a career high in total, by far at 2,563, which would be the most points any player has scored in a regular season since 2019 James Harden. But what's crazier is that no other player is even at 900. This year, second place being De'Aaron Fox, who trails by 125 points. He's one of the best scorers of this generation at 2nd in points per game and will likely have his 3rd straight season averaging 30 points, becoming just the 14th player to ever even average 30 for only 3 years. But how is he scoring these buckets? Well, Shai is the best driver we have seen in years. He's averaging a league-leading 50.2 points off drives, nearly half of all those points, and nobody is close, with Swipa, LaMelo, and Zion all 3 points below him. Since the NBA started tracking drives, only one player has averaged 15 or more off drives a game. Shai has done it, and he's done it the last 3 seasons. He's also a very strong finisher that can go through contact, but has enough finessing inside, something that also helps with his elite mid-range game. Shai is averaging 59.2% from the field from 10 to 16 feet from the basket, easily a career high, as the last 2 years, even though he has been great from the mid-range, it was 51.2 and 53%. Even from 16 to 24 feet, Shai has been shooting a solid 46.9%. Around 6.5 of his pull-up shots have been 2s, most of them in the mid-range, with the handle to create some very good-looking shots. He has a bag, but he can also convert at 54.5%. In isolation, Shai has made a league-high 77 field goals made at a 46.1% rate, but he is a beast in the post, with the 24th most points and most among guards, while shooting 55.9%. He's even becoming a better shooter, averaging a career-high 2.2 threes made, while shooting 35%, despite a lot of his shots being very contested, or step-backs, which usually are made at a much lower rate than most threes. Even in the clutch, Shai is averaging 50% field goal and 60% from 3 on 10 deep range attempts, and the Thunder don't go to the clutch much just because they've been that good. But he is a generationally great scorer. But even as an offensive engine, he's still elite, despite not being the best playmaker. Those 6 assisted games are nice. The Thunder are 15.9 points better per 100 possessions with him on the court than on the bench, the highest among rotational Thunder players, and even the Thunder have the 7th highest offensive rating, despite the personnel on this team, at least that have been healthy, not being great offensively, and many having down seasons on that side of the ball so far. But Shai has carried them to be great offensively. But what may separate him from others is his two-way skill. Shai is a playmaker defensively. He's 2nd in the league in steals with 64. With a long wingspan, he's able to reach in and tap balls away, while he's also an elite rim defender as a guard. At 6'6" and athletic, he got inside and deters shots, while averaging over a block a game, and his 37 blocks are tied for most among all guards. He has over 100 stocks so far, one of just 5 players, with 3 of the other 4 being big men, being Wemby, AD, Triple J, and the other being Dyson Daniels, who's averaging one of the most insane steal seasons you'll ever see. Those turnovers really help the Thunder in transition. As a young and fast team, they're 4th in points scored in transition and are very efficient while doing it. Shai is also in the 96th percentile of DEPM, a stat that tracks a player's defensive impact, and he's consistently up there in DEPM, being up there the last few years. But there is more advanced defensive stats I can use to prove just how good he is. He currently has a league-leading 2.5 defensive win shares, and on pace for what would be a career high in 6.4. LeBron's peak defensive year in this stat was 6.5. He also has a league-leading plus 3.3 defensive box plus minus, also likely, it is unsurprisingly a career high. When guarded by Shai, players shoot just 41.1% from the field, and considering how much Shai helps inside, that is just insane. But to win MVP, you need team success. So just how good are the OKC Thunder? Well, currently OKC is 27-5 and running away with first place in the West, as the second-seeded Grizzlies are 5 games back, and the Thunder are very close to the best record in the league, just 1 loss back of Cleveland. The Thunder's 7th-ranked offensive rating is their 2nd highest in franchise history, while their league-leading defensive rating is the highest relative D rating in franchise history, meaning compared to era, it is the best defense out of any Thunder or Sonics team, and it truly is one of the greatest defenses of all time. Remember, they're doing this with pretty much no Chet. He barely played this season. Just 4 of the 32 games they have played, they allowed 120 or more points, a mark that is very commonplace in today's league, and they have held opponents below 90 the same amount of times, and below 100 14 times. It is 2 times more likely that a team scores under 100 points on OKC than they score above league average, which is 113 points. Opponents score on average 103.3 points a game against the Thunder, which leads the league despite ranking top 10 in pace, which second place Orlando, who is still amazing defensively, this is not to throw stays, is second last in pace. And in net rating, the Thunder are first, and in team success may be the difference maker in this MVP race. Looking at last year's MVP race, both Jokic and Shai took an upper hand over Luka because of record. Their teams had won like 8 or so games more. And while the MVP title has taken a significant hit with a very inconsistent criteria over the last decade, being one of the best players on one of the best teams will always put you in the conversation. And that is what is occurring right now. Shai has the best combination of individual and team success this season. And though the NBA's ladder doesn't have him first with Jokic in that spot, which has raised questions among fans, Shai has been going back and forth with Jokic in Basketball Reference's MVP metric, which usually heavily favors stats. But among the masses, Shai has won, with even Timberwolves star Ant calling Shai the MVP. And there isn't anyone on his level for the award right now. Luka Doncic and Joel Embiid, who are usually in MVP discussions, will both miss out on the 65 games requirement needed to win, while candidates Nikola Jokic and Giannis Antetokounmpo's teams are 18-13 and 17-14, with the 18-win Nuggets trailing OKC by 8.5 games just about 40% into the season. Shai is clearly the MVP favorite and making an argument to be a top 3 player in the league. He is that good.